The morning light felt like it was lying to me. It poured over the Golden Gate Bridge in a warm, forgiving gold as I drove north, the bay shining as if nothing in the world could go wrong. I kept my hands at 10 and 2 and breathed through the tightness in my chest, the kind that always shows up before a family performance. Ahead waited the Presidio Officers Club, where the Navy had chosen to host a Pacific Fleet Awards ceremony and where my younger brother would be honored. I told myself to stay calm. I told myself I knew my part. I parked beneath eucalyptus trees that smelled like clean medicine after rain. Proud families drifted up the walkway in suits and dress whites, shoulders squared, eyes bright. I matched their pace in a camel coat that hid the truth on my shoulders. A simple coat, a simple plan. Let them think whatever they wanted to think. Let the day speak for me. At the checkpoint, a young master at arms took my ID with careful hands. He scanned the tablet, frowned, scanned again. I could see my reflection in the black glass, steady face, steady eyes, the discipline I had spent years building. He cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I am sorry. I do not have a Rachel Carter on the guest list for Lieutenant Daniel Carter. I have Richard Carter, Evelyn Carter, and Claire Carter." He read the names like he was counting off drill commands. Each name tapped my ribs, not mine. Not an error. A decision. A black SUV rolled to the curb with the inevitability of a tide. Doors opened. Daniel stepped out in perfect whites, hair too perfect, smile practiced for photographs and career boards. He took in the scene in a single glance, and that familiar half-smile curved at the corner of his mouth, the one he used when he wished he were kinder, but could not bear to be. "Probably a mix-up," he said to his wife, pitching his voice just enough. "She sits behind computers. She should have married a real officer." The words were not new. They were only public. My mother adjusted the clasp of her pearl earrings and looked away. My father did not look at me at all. He looked at the line, the clock, the inconvenience. They moved through as if the gate had never been closed to anyone they loved. For a second, the eucalyptus smell turned sharp and bitter. The master-at-arms shifted, mortified by a mess that was not his. "Ma'am, I will need you to step aside." I did not argue. I did not ask him to try again. I stepped back onto the pale concrete and let the scene play out. Laughter from the upper terrace drifted down with the wind. Flags snapped in clean little bursts. Somewhere a brass section tuned up and missed a note, then found it again. It all felt too cheerful for what was happening in my throat. I could have called. I could have texted. I could have said 3 words that would have changed everything. I chose silence. The choice cooled inside me, like water turning to ice along the edges of a winter pond. The old ache did not disappear. It crystallized. Let them believe it, I told myself. Let them write the story they love to tell. Today, the truth will walk in on its own 2 feet. For a moment, the present blurred, and a backyard flashed up in my mind. A sheet cake that said Future Admiral. My father at the grill, voice big with pride for his son. My medal in my pocket that night, the one no one asked to see. The old sting threaded itself through the new one, a single long seam of memory. The young sailor started to apologize again. I shook my head once. "It is all right," I said. Then I straightened my coat, fixed my gaze on the courtyard, and waited for whatever came next. The eucalyptus scent faded as another smell took over in my mind. Charcoal and sweet frosting. The memory came uninvited, vivid as though I had stepped backward in time. I was 18, barefoot in the grass of our San Diego backyard, watching my father flip burgers at the grill while neighbors and half the retired fleet filled our lawn chairs. The occasion was Daniel's acceptance letter to the Naval Academy. It was not just a celebration. It was a coronation. My father, Richard Carter, normally reserved, had transformed into a man swollen with pride. He boomed out Daniel's name again and again, one hand gripping tongs, the other clasping officers on the shoulder. My mother, Evelyn, swept through the yard, balancing trays of lemonade, her pearls shining as brightly as her smile. And in the center of the picnic table sat a sheet cake from a local bakery. In blue letters, thick and garish, it read, "Congratulations, Future Admiral." Everyone clapped. Everyone cheered. Even the flag on the porch seemed to lean closer to Daniel. That same week, I had won first place in a national science competition. My cryptography project, a lattice of code and probability, had been recognized by judges flown in from MIT and Stanford. The medal they gave me was heavy and gold, strung on a broad blue ribbon. For the first time in my life, I thought I had something worth showing. That evening, while the noise of the party still echoed from the backyard, I found my father in the living room. He sat in his favorite leather chair, the Wall Street Journal folded across one knee. I held the medal like an offering, palms sweating, heart loud in my chest. "Dad," I whispered, "I won." He glanced down for less than a second. "Good job, Rachel." His eyes slid back to the print. Then, almost without a pause, he added, "Daniel needs to start his training runs early. Pleb summer will break him if he isn't ready." The words pushed me backward as surely as a wave slamming into sand. I nodded, tucked the medal behind me, and left the room. Later, I placed it in a small wooden box with old letters and a dried corsage, hidden where no one else would ever look. Years later, when I announced my acceptance into naval intelligence, the reaction was no different. Richard's eyes hardened. "Intelligence? That's a support role. Carters are fighters. We lead from the front." Mother tried to smooth the blow. "Better for her," she said softly. "It's safer." They meant it as reassurance. But to me it was a sentence, a verdict that I was fragile, that I could not stand shoulder to shoulder with them. Those moments became the bedrock of my resolve. Each slight, each dismissal was another layer of steel poured into my spine. They thought I had chosen safety. What I had chosen was a different battlefield, one they could not imagine. And yet, even then, part of me still wanted them to see me, still longed for their applause. Would you like me to continue directly with part 3? Inside the Shadow War, in the same flowing style, around 475 words? The present dissolved, and the memory of disappointment gave way to the place where my real battles were fought. Not in sunlit courtyards or parade grounds, but in a concrete bunker buried beneath the hills outside San Diego. We called it the Vault. There were no windows, no natural light, just the endless glow of screens arranged in a curved wall that stretched across the operations center. The air was cold, recycled, and smelled faintly of ozone from servers stacked in endless rows. This was my battlefield. Not rifles or missiles, but streams of code, thermal images, encrypted chatter bouncing between satellites. One Tuesday night that bled into Wednesday still lives under my skin. A civilian tanker had been seized near the Strait of Malacca. 12 crew members were locked on deck, while armed pirates circled like wolves. The SEAL team tasked with the rescue, call sign Viper 1, depended on the feed my analysts and I pulled together. "Viper 1, confirm target location. You are 2 mics out." My voice cut through that headset, even as my pulse hammered. On the largest screen, a satellite thermal view flickered. Heat signatures clustered near the bridge, 7 armed, 12 huddled together. A digital chessboard of lives. "Eagle eye sharpen resolution on stern approach," I ordered. The image clarified. That was when I saw it. A fishing boat with no running lights, approaching against the current. Too quiet, too deliberate. My fingers flew across the console, enlarging the feed. The hull was cold, but 6 human shapes glowed faintly inside. Armed, waiting. It was an ambush. If the SEALs boarded, they would be slaughtered from behind. "Viper 1, abort. Abort immediately. Secondary hostile force at your 6. My words cracked through the silence like a whip. A tense pause, then a reply. "Copy, breaking off." The room exhaled as one. We had been seconds away from catastrophe. 12 civilians and an entire SEAL team lived to breathe because of a decision made in that frozen chamber. I leaned back, hands trembling only once the comms went quiet. That was when my personal phone vibrated in my pocket, a forbidden intrusion in this sterile place. I pulled it out. A text from Daniel lit the small screen. "Enjoying your museums, sis? Hope you are not working too hard on your reports." Reports, museums. His world so far removed from mine that it was almost absurd. In that moment, I felt the wall of ice rise higher inside me. My brother would never understand that my desk job had just shifted the balance of life and death on another continent. I clicked the phone dark and set it aside. The mission wasn't over. There would always be another screen, another ghost boat, another decision no one outside the vault would ever know. And I accepted it. The shadows were my chosen place. But that night, as the adrenaline faded, a thought curled at the edges of my mind. Someday the truth would have to step into the light. 2 days after the Malacca operation, I was summoned to the Pentagon. The request came without explanation, delivered through a secure channel that brooked no delay. I boarded the red-eye from San Diego, the hum of the aircraft like a lullaby that refused to let me sleep. By dawn, I was walking through the marbled corridors of the E-ring, my heels striking a rhythm that felt both foreign and inevitable. The office I entered belonged to Admiral Jonathan Lawson, a 4-star whose reputation stretched from the South China Sea to the halls of Congress. I had seen him once from a distance, but never expected to be called into his sanctum. His office smelled of leather and strong coffee, not the ceremonial cologne of so many senior officers. Maps lined the walls, not medals. Photographs of him with sailors in muddy boots, standing shoulder to shoulder in far-flung corners of the globe. "Sit, Rachel," he said, his voice gravel worn smooth with time. He poured a mug of coffee himself, no aid, no ceremony, and set it in front of me. "You look exhausted." For a moment, I wasn't sure whether to nod or deny it. Before I could answer, he leaned across the desk, his eyes sharp but warm. "You saved 12 civilians and an entire SEAL team. That operation will not make the headlines. Your name will not appear in the reports. But I know. The president knows. And that's enough for me to say you've earned more than shadows." I swallowed against the tightness in my throat. "Thank you, sir." He tapped a thick folder on his desk, its cover stamped classified in red. "Operation Silent Current," he said. "Your work dismantling that cyber terror network in the Pacific Rim? It's been locked down for years. We've kept it buried to protect sources, but the Joint Chiefs agree. Enough time has passed. Parts of it can be declassified." The name hit me like a thunderclap. Silent Current had consumed 3 years of my life. A lattice of fake corporations, shell banks, encrypted signals. We had choked the money flow of an organization that planned to destabilize half a dozen nations. It was my proudest achievement, and the loneliest, because I had never been able to share it. Admiral Lawson's voice softened. "The Department of the Navy has nominated you for the Distinguished Service Medal. The ceremony will be next month." He paused, a faint smile curving his lips. "If I'm not mistaken, that's the same day your brother is being recognized at the Presidio." My breath caught. "Yes, sir." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "How poetic would it be to honor 2 children of Commander Richard Carter on the same day? 2 very different kinds of service, both vital. Your family and the Navy should see that clearly." I sat frozen, the words reverberating like sonar in deep water. For so long, I had hidden behind silence. Could I let the truth walk onto a stage already built for my brother? Admiral Lawson gave me one final look, heavy with certainty. "It's time, Rachel. Time they saw who you really are." The morning of the ceremony broke clear and sharp, the kind of day that seems designed for photographs and history books. I drove across the Golden Gate Bridge again, the water below glittering as though it had never known storms. My trench coat lay across my shoulders, concealing the truth stitched into the fabric beneath. Each mile toward the Presidio felt heavier, as if the air itself resisted what was about to happen. At the checkpoint, it unfolded exactly as I had anticipated. The same young master-at-arms from last time scanned my ID and froze. His brows pinched, his lips pressed thin, the same confusion written all over his face. "Ma'am, I'm sorry," he began, fumbling with the tablet. "You're still not on the list." Behind me, another wave of families waited their turn, shifting impatiently. I could feel eyes prickling the back of my neck. The humiliation tasted metallic. And then, With cinematic timing, the black sedan rolled up beside us. The door opened, and Admiral Lawson stepped out in full dress uniform. Even before he spoke, the atmosphere shifted. His 4 stars caught the morning sun, casting points of light that seemed to command the entire courtyard. He scanned the scene once, guard gate me standing stiff in my coat, and his expression settled into one of easy authority. "There you are, Admiral Carter," he said, his voice carrying with the effortless resonance of command. "We were about to send out a search party." The title detonated in the air like a silent explosion. "Admiral." The guard's face cycled through disbelief, horror, and sheer panic. He snapped to attention so fast it was a miracle his spine didn't break. "Admiral, ma'am, my apologies." His salute cracked the air. He fumbled with the controls, lifting the barrier in frantic haste. I inclined my head once, neither gloating nor forgiving, and let Lawson rest a guiding hand on my arm. Together, we walked past the checkpoint. Behind us, I caught the outline of my family clustered near the entrance. My father stiff as marble, my mother clutching her pearls, Daniel with his mouth slightly open as if the words he wanted had abandoned him. In a quiet room behind the stage, I finally removed the trench coat. I laid it neatly across a chair, the last piece of camouflage. Beneath it gleamed the crisp service whites of a rear admiral, the 2 silver stars on my shoulders waiting. My hands moved with deliberate care as I fastened them in place, each click of the pin sounding like a verdict delivered. When I stepped out again, the difference was immediate. A vice admiral I had worked with at Joint Staff clasped my hand. A Marine Corps general offered a rare, gruff smile. "Silent current was genius, Carter. Long overdue recognition." Their words carried weight heavier than metals, and across the aisle, I could feel my family staring. Not with pride, not yet, but with shock so raw it had nowhere to hide. The day had only just begun. The auditorium filled until every seat was taken, the air heavy with expectation. Brass instruments, polished to a mirror shine, caught the light, and banners of the Pacific Fleet hung in neat precision. I sat in the front VIP row beside Admiral Lawson, my posture straight, hands folded calmly in my lap. The truth rested silently on my shoulders in the form of 2 silver stars. The program began with the practiced rhythm of tradition. Names were called, medals pinned, applause swelling and fading like tides. Then came Daniel's turn. He rose with the confidence of a man who had never once been told no. His whites gleamed, his chin lifted, his smile radiated easy charm. He ascended the stage as though he belonged to it. "Lieutenant Daniel Carter," the master of ceremonies intoned, "for meritorious service in support of combat operations, the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal." The applause rang out, loud and sustained. Daniel dipped his head in humble acknowledgement, the image of filial virtue. He accepted the medals, turned to the microphone, and spoke with a voice smooth as rehearsed theater. "I want to thank the Navy for this great honor and my commanding officers for their leadership." His eyes found our father in the crowd. "To my father, Commander Richard Carter, for teaching me what it means to serve with courage and honor." My father's chest swelled, his jaw tight with pride. "To my mother, Evelyn, whose prayers and support carried me through every deployment." She dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief. Daniel's gaze softened as it settled on his wife. "And to my wife, Claire, for being my anchor in every storm." The audience sighed, charmed. He paused for effect, surveying the room like a king surveying his court. His eyes passed over me, lingering not even a second. No recognition, not a word, not a glance. I was invisible again, erased in the most public way possible. He concluded with patriotic flourish, and the crowd erupted in thunderous applause. He soaked in the ovation, bowing his head, smiling at admirers, basking in the golden glow of recognition. And then the air shifted. Admiral Lawson rose from his chair. He moved to the podium with a quiet purpose that silenced the hall. A 4-star general deviating from script was no small thing. The hush was instant, electric. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady, commanding, "we have an unscheduled addition to today's program, a recognition that, for paramount reasons of national security, has remained classified until now. The audience leaned forward, curiosity ignited. Daniel, still basking in applause, froze mid-smile. Lawson's gaze swept the hall and then found me. It is my honor to present the Distinguished Service Medal to Rear Admiral Rachel Carter, Commander of Operation Silent Current. A collective gasp surged through the auditorium. Then, as though bound by instinct, every uniformed officer from the youngest ensign to the most seasoned captain rose to their feet in a cascading wave of respect. Except for three: my father, my mother, my brother. They remained seated, stone still in the flood of honor that now belonged to me. The applause still thundered in my ears when the ceremony ended, but it was not the sound that followed me. It was the silence of three people who had remained seated, frozen in their chairs while an entire hall rose to honor me. At the reception, beneath chandeliers glittering over the Presidio ballroom, I moved through the crowd of officers and dignitaries. Their handshakes were firm, their congratulations genuine. "Brilliant work, Admiral Carter." Silent Current changed the game. For once, I was not a ghost, but I felt them coming before I saw them. My family, cutting through the room like a storm cloud. Daniel led, jaw tight, eyes hard. Richard followed, stiff-backed, his expression unreadable. My mother trailed, pale, clutching her clutch bag like a lifeline. Conversations around us dimmed as though the air itself sensed what was about to happen. "Rear Admiral Carter!" Daniel spat, his tone dipped in venom. He made my title sound like an insult. "That was quite a performance." I did not flinch. "It wasn't a performance. You lied to us," he snapped, loud enough that a few nearby heads turned. "You lied for 15 years. Let us believe you were nothing more than a desk jockey while you played secret war games behind closed doors. Do you have any idea how that makes us look?" General Lawson, across the room, caught my eye. With a subtle nod, he signaled one of his aides. Within moments, a young lieutenant commander appeared at my side. "Admiral," he said smoothly, "perhaps this conversation would be better in a private conference room." I agreed with a calm tilt of my head. The aide led us down a carpeted hallway, the four of us trailing like actors in a play we hadn't rehearsed. Inside the room, soundproofed and still, the door closed with a heavy click. The mask Daniel had worn in public shattered. "Why?" he exploded, pacing like a caged animal. "Why would you humiliate us like that? You stood by while I lectured you about service, knowing you were laughing at me the whole time. He jabbed a finger at me, voice cracking. "You sat in an air-conditioned office and somehow get a medal bigger than mine. It's a joke!" I poured a glass of water from the crystal pitcher on the table, my movements deliberate, unhurried. I took a slow sip, set the glass down. Only then did I speak. "I never laughed at you, Daniel. I never lied. I simply stopped trying to explain myself to people who had already decided not to listen." I turned to my father. "Did you ever once ask what my work involved? Or did you dismiss it because I didn't carry a rifle?" Then to my mother, who wept silently. "Did you ever ask if I was happy? Or only when I planned to marry?" The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Richard's eyes finally met mine, but for the first time in my life, he looked old, defeated. And then the sharp ring of my secure phone cut through the air, a sound that meant only one thing: duty. I glanced at the screen, then at them. "I have to take this," I said, voice crisp. "But hear me clearly. If we are to have a relationship going forward, it begins with respect. Without it, we have nothing." I opened the door, leaving them in the heavy quiet of their own reckoning. 6 months later, the world felt quieter. Not because my responsibilities had lessened, if anything, they had grown heavier, but because something inside me had shifted. The ice wall that had once been only defense had become a foundation. It was a Sunday afternoon when I finally returned to my parents' home in San Diego. The house looked the same: white siding, neat lawn, the old flagpole in the yard. Yet when I stepped into the living room, I froze. Against the far wall stood a brand-new glass-fronted cabinet made of dark wood. Inside, Medals gleamed under soft lights, my grandfather's bronze star, my father's service ribbons, and in the center, on its own shelf, sat my Distinguished Service Medal, flanked by a framed photo of Admiral Lawson pinning it to my uniform. My father stood beside the cabinet, polishing the glass with a soft cloth. When he turned, his expression wasn't pride exactly, but neither was it scorn. It was something quieter, something closer to acknowledgement. My mother emerged from the kitchen, carrying a plate of warm cookies. "He built that case himself," she said, her voice tentative, eyes searching mine. "He said the story of the Carters wasn't complete until it included you." We sat for dinner that evening, the air strangely light. No one boasted, no one compared. Instead, my father cleared his throat and asked, "Rachel, how do you manage the politics of so many senior officers at the Pentagon?" "Must be complicated." His tone was cautious, but it was a real question. For the first time in my life, he was curious. Later, Daniel spoke about a new safety protocol he was implementing on his ship. He shifted in his chair, eyes down. "Funny thing," he muttered. "Some of the principles, I feel like I learned them from somewhere." He glanced at me, almost shy, then quickly looked away. It wasn't a confession, not yet, but it was a crack in the armor of his pride. After dessert, he found me on the old wooden swing on the back porch. The night air smelled of cut grass and sea salt. Crickets sang. For a long time we sat in silence the way we had as children. Finally he spoke. "I'm sorry, Rachel," he said quietly. "I mocked you for years because I needed to be the hero. I thought Dad's approval was oxygen, and I was suffocating. Seeing you today, I realize it was never about you. It was about me." I watched fireflies blink in the yard. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "But understand this, my worth was never yours to grant. I carried it here." I tapped my chest. Long before anyone recognized it, he nodded slowly. "I'm proud to be your brother." And for the first time, I smiled and meant it. "I'm proud to be your sister." The peace I felt in that moment wasn't victory. It was acceptance. Lesson: true worth is never given by family, titles, or applause. It is something you claim for yourself, and only when you believe it can others finally see it.